I got to play Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 early, and this is actually really cool for everyone. Warhorse Studios is giving reviewers a full month of early access with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. And today, I can talk about the first 8 to 10 hours or so of the game. Basically, I can talk about what I experienced up until a certain quest that's relatively early into the game, about 10 hours in. But of course, get subscribed because I have a lot more coming about this one, and I do have a bit of a unique preview here as I've only actually played a couple of hours of Kingdom Come Deliverance 1. So I have a rough idea on some of the mechanics, and I read about some stuff to do comparisons for this video, but Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is really my first experience with this world and many of its intricate mechanics, which of course can be off-putting for many, but after about 10 hours, I gotta say, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is some of the most fun I've ever had in a video game. This is one of the most immersive medieval open world games that I've ever played, and despite it being a ton of intricate systems with a ton of depth behind them, this game is still incredibly approachable for a completely new player. I'm not going to share any major spoilers in this video, but one thing you'll notice is KCD2 lives heavily in the shadow of the first game, particularly in the first few hours of this second game. I imagine lots of players are like me, wondering if they needed to play the first game in order to experience the second one. And the answer is no, you don't have to play the first game, many things will be explained, but playing the first one will definitely enhance things for you. The first few hours of KCD2 pick up right where the first one leaves off. So right at the start of the sequel, you're going to be a pretty well kitted out soldier, and due to some events that will occur early on, you end up dropping in status a bit. You're not going to continue to be a well kitted out soldier. And also, you're going to see a plethora of flashbacks during these initial hours. There's actually several flashback segments where you're just kind of watching things happen. And these will explain some of the major story moments from the first game for new players and remind some of those returning players on what happened. And honestly, they do a really good job at this. Some of your major motivations in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, at least for the first part of the story, are heavily based off actions taken in the first game. You want to go kill this guy because of something that happened before. So these flashbacks are really giving you the context to your motivation in the sequel. And one of the things that really shocked me about this one is I really enjoyed this. I'm somebody who hates some of these lengthy and cumbersome intros into video games. The Red Dead Redemption 2 intro is why I've never properly played that game. Yeah, I'm gonna get flack for that one, aren't I? But typically, I just want to get to the damn open world segment and hate some of those long intros. And hey, if you hate long intros in videos, timestamps below to get to my favorite parts of Kingdom Come Deliverance, like when I steal a horse, fight a guy for his clothes, but then his wife recognizes me. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 has a long introductory segment, but it almost works better that way. We're talking about multiple hours of kind of being in a rough tutorial mode of sorts, but I love this. It's really because it doesn't really feel like a tutorial as you're going through it, at least for major portions of it. They do a really good job at intermixing some of the obvious tutorial minigames with a ton of dialogue between that, but then also some story progression will occur in between minigames, and then sometimes you'll even have encounters with others. So you get this nice mix of actual content that is moving things forward, being taught something, and if you've already played the first game, a lot of these tutorials you could kind of do a shorter and easier version of, but then talking about what is going to happen next, then having some kind of tense encounter, and then, oh, here's the sneak tutorial again. The intro of this game is pretty long, but it had a really nice seamless flow to it that made it go by quite quickly and feel like you're actually playing a video game, not being taught how to play a video game. During this intro, you'll have more overt tutorials around some of the major game systems. I'm not going to break down each one of these, but KCD2 takes some of its very complex mechanics and makes them incredibly approachable here. The tutorials are really well made and very easy to follow. But during this segment, you're also going to be answering a bunch of questions about your character and their past. As far as I can tell, KCD2 isn't going to have any kind of save carryover from the first game, so instead, it's via dialogue that you can determine some of the major outcomes from the first game. This pops up a few times over the first few hours of gameplay, and it's really nicely handled. It just feels like you're having a typical encounter with another NPC, answering questions for them. So you could say, oh, I tend to have this type of playstyle, or I'm protecting my lord in this way. This, of course, being an implication on how you designed your character in the first game, so then some of those stats will be boosted up for the start of the second game. And at other points in dialogue, the characters might be reminiscing about what happened previous, something that happened during the first game, and you could basically say the outcome to the event, which of course will then log that outcome and then have some kind of impact. It's nicely done, because for me as a new player, it just kind of felt like an organic way to build out my character to be whoever I want to be in this world. But I imagine for veteran players, it's going to be a nice little nostalgic trip where you could live out some of those memories from the first game. But pretty quickly, you'll be knocked down a peg. No spoilers for this video, but something happens in the earlier portion of the game that reduces you to almost nothing. You start off strong, but then pretty quickly find yourself starting all over again. And you're really left with one core motivation and several obstacles to get that job done. So I don't have much of an opinion on the story as of yet, as it's just too early to analyze it. But one thing I can say is this game is hilarious. Even in just the first couple of hours, there are several incredibly funny moments in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. This game and story so far was pretty consistently giving me Monty Python vibes.
All right, have it your way. We really have nothing more to say to each other.
And one thing I did like is there is plenty of dialogue available throughout all of this. In quite a few instances, you have this choice to either cut off dialogue because you basically heard everything you need to hear, or you can optionally continue talking with somebody. Sometimes those completely optional dialogue paths would end up being a few additional minutes of dialogue and even open up additional choices that weren't otherwise available. I really enjoyed this. It felt like it opened up nice roleplay options to try and push people even further in certain instances. And overall, for the first several hours of this game, I really felt like I could play as the type of person I wanted to be, whether it being good or evil, and having a nice amount of impact on what kind of outcomes I was seeing. And overall, the length of the tutorial, or really more locked down introduction, did a really good job at hiding the more tedious parts of it. It was fairly long, so it didn't really feel like a tutorial at points. But I do imagine on subsequent playthroughs, a quick start save or even a quick start mod will be a must, because yeah, that intro is fairly long here. But once you do get into the open world portion, that's where this game truly leveled up, at least for me. Because at least in my opinion, walking around and experiencing this world is just genuinely one of the most immersive experiences in gaming right now. Visually, things are stunning. A clear upgrade over the first game, and it's one of those games where, yeah, you're going to be riding around on your horse and just need to stop at some point to take it all in. The environments consistently look amazing here. But that open world doesn't just look amazing, it also feels amazing to play in. I got to the open world part and just kind of wanted to experience all this game had to offer. So I immediately stole a horse and began riding off into the wilderness. You'll find some interesting things doing this. I found a local brawler and his coach and gave them a good beatdown after they challenged me to a fight. But eventually I end up in another local town on my stolen horse and start exploring. One of the first buildings I enter has this sleeping guard inside. And wouldn't you know it, this is a great opportunity to try out KCD2's pickpocketing mechanic. But of course, me being a noob, I immediately blundered this and the man wakes up. But thanks to some of the skills learned from previous encounters, I felt well prepared to put this man back to sleep with my fists. And after doing so, I got a pretty massive upgrade because I could loot all the things off his body, loot all the things from his house, and in turn, I'm able to steal some non-homeless looking clothes and even get some of my very first armor of the game. Unfortunately, his wife was sitting right outside and immediately recognizes me.
Jesus Christ! Those things you've got on! You must have stolen them from our house!
In turn, alerting the entire town, and I end up having to flee. I get stuck in some traffic, which turns into road rage, and then I end up dying to this fight that breaks out and lose everything. But honestly, that was some of the most fun I've had in a video game in a long time. As much as the core story and really mechanics are going to be a selling point of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, I think with my audience in particular, the open world is going to convince a lot of you. I spent a bit just walking around, taking things in, and you could find quite a few cool interactions. Lots of NPCs will react to you here, saying nice or mean things, and you have the option to respond to them. This oftentimes being based on something around your character. For a while, I was a fairly smelly dude and got quite a few comments talking about that.
What the? Did I step in shit? Oh, it's you.
One more word and I'll beat the shit out of you.
My word.
But during a separate fit of thievery, I ended up getting captured by some guards, and after my stint in the pillory, I had this negative reputational debuff. So guards would just keep making criminal comments towards me for a limited time. I stumbled upon some fellows fighting, and upon chatting with them, I learned that these guys are actually former blacksmiths who lost their forge in the war, and are now taking up fighting to let out their anger. But I still found this to be a really nice interaction. There was just some people living in this world, being able to tell their story of how the world and what events are going on are impacting impacting them. And honestly, that was the aspect of this game that surprised me the most. A lot of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2's world will just unfold around you and without you. People going about their days. You could find guards getting into chats with one another, and these are fairly long. You could stand here for a while and listen on what's going on in the local area. You'd find farmers praying at graves to start the day before going back to work. This is coming up to the limit game time wise that I can talk about, but this world really impressed me and definitely has a lot to uncover. When it comes to the game overall and some of its core mechanics, particularly combat, things are definitely different here. I tried to learn KCD1's combat before playing KCD2, and things are easier and more approachable in the sequel. Combat in KCD2 feels like it was made a bit simpler, particularly in the very early game before you unlock all of your abilities and really combos. Combos feel like they're going to be a cornerstone of being successful in the later parts of the game. So while I'm not a complete novice when it comes to sword fighting in video games, one of the main reasons I wanted to try Kingdom Come Deliverance 1 was because how much I loved Chivalry 2 and wanted a more in-depth combat system in an RPG, but even still, from the onset, I found Kingdom Come Deliverance's 2 combat to be incredibly approachable and much less punishing. It's really nice because it feels like you get the hang of the basic mechanics relatively quick, but it still has a very high ceiling, and getting things like footwork, timing, and combos down can take many more hours. And to an extent, this was a feeling I had with a lot of the features in this game. They're intense. Alchemy here is more hands-on than alchemy in almost any other game I've played. And if you did play the first game, things will be quite similar, but I think that's actually a good thing. KCD2 really feels like a polished experience. A lot of the features in KCD2 feel fairly mature, like they took what they had in the first one, made some tweaks to make it better in the ways that they saw from player feedback, and then implemented some incredibly well done tutorials and took out some of the annoying parts. I never found this sequel being particularly confusing or difficult to get into, even despite the reputation of the first one. And my simple first impressions of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is this game is great. This is a world that you can get lost in, even though I'm only 10 hours in, it feels like I have genuinely just scratched the surface, like only barely finished the tutorial scratched the surface. I am completely blown away by what I've played so far, and I just want to play more right now. This game is completely taking over my free time, so thanks to Plaion and Warhorse for the early code, but otherwise get subscribed because I have a lot more content on this game coming.